All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Cutlass Podcast. I hope this finds you well as we journey along together to improve your leadership and management skills. And today I'm really excited to host my guest, Jason Vanderhaden. Jason served as the 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and that was not too recently ago that he retired. So he served from 2018 to May of 2022. And now he works as the Director of Crew Integration for Eastern Shipbuilding. And when he's not working a full-time job, he finds time to do some consulting, and he serves on advisory boards and does that kind of thing. So, hey, Jason, thanks again. I've been looking forward to do this one a while. So welcome to the Cutlass Podcast.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. I've admired your leadership and your dedication to the Chiefs Mess for many years, and you were coaching me back when I was on active duty. So it's a real thrill for me to be here with you as well.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, I always had this thought of like, hey, I want to get him on, but I had to pause the podcast for a little bit when I rolled into my new job. So I'm finally getting up and going. So I'm great. And I think you definitely have some more flexibility now that you're retired. I know that Master Chief job kept you busy.
Yeah.
So how's life after retirement?
It's really good. I don't have to worry about whether or not my uniform's ready. I try not to bring my cell phone everywhere with me anymore. I just you can focus on some of the things that are more important to you in life and start to put your thoughts down and really engage in a different fashion. Really enjoying it. I see you got your instruments behind you. I'm sure you're enjoying retirement too. Able to get after your hobbies a little bit more, which is always nice.
Yeah, it's amazing how the time. I mean, I'm still busy, probably busier than I expected to be, but that's all right. It's doing rewarding stuff, and I think that's kind of, as long as you have that, you can stay passionate, right?
That's right.
So let's, before we get into the topic, which is really, I asked you to talk about your leadership lessons learned. You served a lot of time. It was over 30 years, correct?
34.
34. So there's a lot of learning over a 34-year career from what we would call the deck plate level all the way up to the highest levels of the Coast Guard and the Department of Defense. So I wanted you to take a few minutes because I don't think I've done that before with a guest. I've had Master Chief Petty Officers in the Navy on before, but explain to people what the role is, who you talk to. I mean, it's not just like, hey, I go in, I jump on, the commandant's desk and tell them what we need to do. This is a very complicated position with a lot of influence and sometimes some organizational barriers. So if you could just give an oversight on what the job's about.
Yeah, thanks. So, really very blessed to have been able to serve. As you move up in the Navy or in the Coast Guard, your sphere of influence grows, which is exciting. It means that you are able to leverage your experience, your knowledge, and your wisdom to help others. And that's what we want as a chief mess and as a chief. That's all you really want to do is to serve others and help others. That's the true meaning of greatness, is how many people you get to help. So is serving as a Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, you have the opportunity really to help everybody in the Coast Guard and even some retirees and everybody, families, everybody affected that's in your sphere of influence, which is a lot. So the good thing is when you move up, when you're a chief and you're kind of advising a lieutenant commander or a lieutenant or whatever, they probably need some rudder, they need a little direction, they need your advice. But when you're working for a 4-star, they didn't get there yesterday. So they oftentimes, if you're standing on their desk, something is probably wrong. There's something probably way wrong. So fortunately, I never really had to do that. I never had to tell the commandant that, hey, he was doing something wrong or anything. He's pretty smart. But what you do is you are kind of the connective tissue. So you're listening, you're in a lot of meetings and at a lot of different levels that the commandant can't be in. So a lot of times the commandant looked at me and said, I'm looking at these different courses of action that are being presented to me, and it feels like I don't love any of them. Can you kind of tell me how we got here? And I can tell him, well, at this level of a meeting, this was discussed and this was the best idea here. So you get to kind of, you get to tell the commandant kind of how we got to where we got to, and then let the commandant decide what the best course of action is. And then once the decisions are made or look like they're going to be made, you can tell the commandant, this is the second, third order effects on the workforce that I'm not sure people are taking into consideration. Or, you can tell them, hey, this is going to be 80% positive, but I think about 20% of the workforce is not going to love this. And this is why. And then after the decision's made, we implement the policy. You travel around and talk to people about the decisions and about the policy changes and understand, what the effects are, the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything going on with the workforce, and then come back and share that with the commandant. So it colors the decision making of the future. So it's just a very, very rewarding job, and you really get to go around, and then you can also explain why. So that was, I think, the biggest thing. You go into chief's calls, and they're like, why are we doing this? What was the thought process? And then you can explain the reasoning and the thought process behind things. Or if something's not being done, you can explain why something's not being done. So you get to be kind of the answer person. You get to go around and kind of tell everybody, what's going on and why things are happening, and then understand what the cause and effect are of that, and then advise the commandant. So, I loved it. It was, we had, the Department of Homeland Security had a lapse in appropriations. So, right out of the gate, we're dealing with folks that, are missing some paycheck, their paychecks are in jeopardy. We actually missed one payday. And then we had, we had the election, and then we had a lot of social justice things that were going on. And then we had the pandemic, and a record hurricane season, wildfires out in the West Coast. I mean, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of bad things, a lot of challenges that we had to work through, and it kept me pretty busy. But I tell you, I didn't need an alarm clock. I woke up on my own every morning and ran into work, because the work was just so rewarding, and I really enjoyed what I did in spite of all the challenges. So you can't. There's nothing compares to that. You being a fleet force master chief, you kind of know that your sphere of influence was huge, and that's just the bigger your sphere of influence is, the more people you can help, the more exciting, the more rewarding the job is. And I hope everybody aspires to serve at the highest level of the organizational will allow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to interview some others too, former MCPON, because I think it's a kind of cool perspective. People don't fully get it. It has evolved over time.
Yes.
But it comes with some frustrations as well. And it comes with some, things you don't expect, right? Like when you get up there and you got, there's Congress that's in the mix. Yes. And there's the secretary for you guys, Homeland Defense, and his undersecretaries and staff. Like, this just isn't the military, right? The military is run by civilians. So there's a huge civilian piece that you got to get into. But so great stuff for another time. I appreciate that overview. So let's talk about these leadership lessons learned. So a lot of time, I know you probably learned a ton more than these. And before we go, I'll frame it under, for those who watch or listen to the podcast, I kind of build this out and try to frame these conversations or align them into one of five kind of 5-point framework. So number one is to develop and build 8 power bases. Number 2 is to learn how to wield 10 influence tactics with those power bases. Number 3 is to build and use a strong suite of communication skills. And that's everything from listening to speaking to writing skills. And number 4, being able to understand and apply situational leadership. And we're definitely going to get into that with some of the lessons learned you talked about. And then number 5 is getting feedback through coaching and things like that, and reflecting to improve your leadership performance. So I think 2 big ones here. We're going to definitely talk about power bases and personal power, and also the situational leadership and how it applies. So the first one you sent me is leading yourself is the most important aspect of leadership. If you can't hold yourself to high standards, you can't hold anyone else. So how or why, what inspired this? Lessons learned? Was it a situation, was a book, or a series of situations? So over to you.
Well, thanks, Paul. Yeah. So, in the Coast Guard, in the leadership development framework of the Coast Guard, there's 4 major tenets that the other categories fall under. And the first one is leading self. leading self, leading others, leading performance and change, and leading the Coast Guard. So leading self is the first and primary. It's the most important. When I was E4, E5, I did not think I was long for the Coast Guard. I didn't intend to do a career, but as I got married and had kids, and it just felt stable, it felt like a good move, and I was enjoying the work that I did. So I decided to stick with it. I didn't lead myself very well. I did what I needed to do to get the job done. I was, probably pretty average. And then I had the opportunity to work for a Master Chief. I'll give his name because I love him to death. His name's Mark Schweiger. And Mark was I worked on a river tender, a buoy tender, setting buoys, and he pushed me. He started pushing me. He was the first person to really demand more of me than I was already giving. I wasn't I didn't cause trouble or anything. I didn't have any, behavioral performance issues. I just wasn't really trying that hard. And he started pushing me, and he showed me how important it was to, intrinsically want to do better, not have to, he made it so that, why don't you want to do better? Why don't you feel the need on your own to want to be better? Why am I having to push you? I should not have to tell you to want to be better than you are right now. And I thought, yeah, you're right. That's a good point. So he started, is that the best you can do? Do you feel like you've done your best? Do you feel like you worked as hard as you could have on that? Do you feel, he started challenging me, and I started understanding the importance of nobody should have to tell me to be the best I can possibly be. That should come from inside. And so then I started recognizing that when I did my best, others tried harder. Also I could push them and ask more of them, because I was pushing myself and asking the most of myself. So it is a great way to instill strong leadership in others, is when you demonstrate that on your own, and when you say, hey, I demand the highest of myself, so I would expect you to do the same, and I'm going to expect that of you. And then they start leading themselves, and when they're leading themselves, you don't have to spend as much time on them. So leading others becomes a whole lot easier when you can lead yourself and then set the role model, set the example for them. That's one person you don't have to worry about anymore. Now you can focus your leadership on folks that either have an ability or a willingness issue, and instead of trying to be leading everybody, you set the example, and so now you really just have to get after a few people that need some help. So that's why I focus on that first. And when I talk to folks and I talk to chief messes, I said, if you're not setting the example, if you're not leading yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to lead others.
Absolutely. I love that too. So, we do talk about, as a leader, you influence in several directions, right? So people typically think, hey, it's the kind of boss model. I lead down and influence the people, but you influence your peers, you influence your boss. But most importantly, to your point, right? I love how you package that leading self. And if you're doing that, you will inspire people to want to do their best. So awesome stuff. All right. Number 2, stay hungry for more responsibility, and you will remember to be a role model. I think this ties in a little bit of what you said there. So build up a little bit with an example, if you can.
Yeah, so, when I was on the ship, I could have just done my job. I could have just done the job that I was on the ship to do, my primary billet, my damage control billet, whatever. I could have just done that. But I endeavored to do more. Again, leading myself, trying to push myself to be the best I could possibly be, the best chief, the best petty officer I could possibly be. I took on, a lot of duties, law enforcement duties, helicopter control, landing signals officer, damage control training team, morale, doing as much as I possibly could. In fact, in some cases, I probably overextended myself, and I had to, I figured out I can't do all this and do a good job at all of it. So you have to figure out what you can do, but always strive for more responsibility. And if you can handle that, more will be given to you. And if you want to be a CMC one day, you can't just be good at your job. The O6s and flag officers that you'll work for always want to see that you can lead across departments, across divisions. You can lead up and, as you just said, you can lead up and down, and that you're constantly striving for more responsibility. One of the things when I was a Master Chief Petty of the Coast Guard, I would get a call from captains and admirals that were going to be hiring command master chiefs, and they would ask me about an individual. Hey, what do you know about this individual? And I would say, they're great. You wouldn't have their name in front of you if they weren't. And they invariably always ask, do they want to be you one day? Do they want to be the Master Chief Petty of the Coast Guard? And if I couldn't answer that question for them, wholeheartedly, I would tell them I don't know. And that was one of the worst things you could say at an interview is, I'm really happy just being the command master chief at X level, because they just that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear, I want to be the Master Chief of the Coast Guard one day, and I see this as a stepping stone to that position. And that's where flag officers and your senior officers, the really successful people in the organization, they're constantly striving for more responsibility. They're not happy with where they're at, and so you should be too. And when it's evident that you're pushing yourself, that you're doing it, people will help you. Successful people attract other successful people, and constantly striving for more responsibility shows that you're not happy. You succeed. You see success as something you still are working towards and still trying to attain. And people love that, and they will constantly. But if you feel like, well, I've arrived, I've made it, I'm good, I'm really happy where I am in the organization, that's where you're going to be. That's where you're going to stay, and you'll be surprised at the people that you attract to that. And it's not the best. You're not getting the best when you announce that you've arrived and you're happy with your status in the organization.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Awesome point. So some things I wrote down. So responsibility, you can take on too much too, right? So we see that sometimes. So you got to be balanced too. So don't take responsibilities that you just can't handle, especially when they're management responsibilities and you get into a lot of planning, organizing. Just be careful with that. I've seen people take on too much too. And then can you do one or two things really well, or can you do 10 things half-ass, frankly, right? So you don't want to get into that situation either.
Yeah, I've done that. In fact, my wife told me, hey, I would sit on my couch in the morning and say, dang, I do not want to go to work. I got so much to do. I'm behind. This is not good. And then your performance starts to go down a little bit, and you're actually counterproductive. You want to get more. You want to take on more responsibility, but you stretch yourself so thin that you can't be good at it. And then you have to go to the XO and say, XO, sorry, I've taken on too much here. I kind of need to find somebody to relieve me of this or that, so I can really focus on being good at a few things. So yes.
And that's why I took a pause on Cutlass Podcast, because I was in that new position, traveling a lot. I was like, this is my primary position. This is my job. This is my major responsibility. So I have to put my 100% focus. And then once I got into that and I learned it and I got efficient with it, we're organized, we're planned. I got people that can help now. Now I'm like, okay, now I found the breathing room. So as you grow into a new position, again, focus on that primary position and then get good at it, get efficient, and then look for these other opportunities. I also wrote down talent management, right? Because that came out, right? So yes, I am investing in you from the strategic perspective. When I see talent, I want to put it where it needs to be used best. So if I see knowledge, skills, abilities in you, people will come looking for those things and develop them in you. And in many cases, you don't even see it in yourself, right? I just think, to your point, I think that's a big thing there is like, don't be surprised, but people are watching. People see stuff in you you don't see. So if you think you've arrived, um, don't be your own worst enemy with that
Right.
attitude, right?
Right.
And that's going to lend itself to complacency. Oh, I've arrived, I've got this. When you grow into a new position, you can listen to the episode I did on that. That the skills and the knowledge, the connections you had in that former position are probably not good enough, right? So when you were the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, what you did as a chief on a cutter, those skills weren't going to get it done, right?
No. Oh no, you're fully committed. So the other thing too is you have to understand as you move up in the organization. Now, you you're full. I mean, Saturdays, Sundays, nights, weekend. It doesn't matter. You're I when I first got selected to be a command master, it was a region level kind of. I was working for a 2-star and in Seattle, and the admiral who was close to me at the time, he says, "Hey, are you all in?" And I said, "Absolutely, admiral. Of course, I'm all in." He goes, "No, no, no, no. Are you all in? Because you're about to be all in for the Coast Guard." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, of course." And I didn't get it. I did not understand what he meant until I was working weekends, I was working nights, I was in uniform almost every day. And I thought, wow, okay, I went from being a Monday to Friday, every now and then I might have to do something on a weekend to, all the time. And, but it was rewarding. It's very rewarding. At first, I almost had to catch myself going, man, I remember Admiral Brown saying, "Am I all in?" And sure enough, he was right. But it's like I said, there's no better feeling than being so engaged and making a difference.
Yep. And I think that's what matters when you get into and again, just to put this in context, and I tell people some days you're in those positions, be careful what you ask for. So there's great things about it. There's a lot of influence there, but there's one of the frustrations is things don't move as quickly, right? So that deck plate level position or that team leader position, I knew every day working like, hey, we got this maintenance done, we trained, you could see that daily direct result. As you move up into those broader organizational roles, again, shaping policy and things, sometimes these things take years. So you've got to be all in and be able to crash that line over and over again.
Oh yeah.
And then one other point I wrote, and then we'll go to the next one. So I think it's your perspective as a leader. So you gave your perspective as being developed. But I think people come to work and want to do well, right? So as an organization, how do you view your people, right? Especially in the military, do you see them as these, young kids that just need to be told what to do all the time? Or do you look like that Master Chief did with you? Do you empower them? Do you challenge them? Do you encourage and inspire them? And then do you reward them? And then find these positions. When you see talent, what do you do with it? Not just for the benefit of the person who wants to move up Maslow's hierarchy, but also for the benefit of the organization, right? Hey, I know here's a person who's got great knowledge, skills, and abilities and could do great things. Again, from the leader perspective, think about how you view your people.
Yep.
And I think that sets your attitude. And we see that, right? You see leaders that have that cynical attitude, and I think they tend to see that kind of person that takes, that requires more leadership and encouragement and stuff like that is the norm instead of maybe not the norm.
Yeah.
All right. So you're a big fan of John Maxwell.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that at the end, right? Because when I go through the resources you offer, you basically said all John Maxwell books. So I've read a few of those, but his goal, it says John Maxwell leadership goal, don't send your ducks to Eagle School.
Yeah.
Know your people and help them work to their strengths. So I had not heard that one before. So what's that one about?
So John Maxwell he has a book called Leadership Gold. And in there, there's a story in there about don't send your ducks to Eagle School. It's deeper than that. He draws an allegory of different animals, and you wouldn't ask a squirrel to do something. You wouldn't ask a cow to, there's certain things you wouldn't ask these animals to do. And, if you're trying to be, and I know equity is a big thing in the organization right now, and equity is equity is good. When you try to treat everybody equal, if you say, I'm going to I'm gonna be agnostic to somebody's strengths, and I'm just gonna put them. They're gonna ask them to do things that I know they're not that good at doing. You're probably not going to achieve a great result, and you're not going to be happy, and they're not going to be happy either. So understanding your people's strengths and making sure that if you asked if you ask the eagle to land on a pond and paddle around, they're not going to do a very good job. And if you ask a duck to fly and try to be a bird of prey, they're not going to do a very good job of that either. But they are both good at what they do. And so, that was the thing that I think I started. It goes along with something else I sent you too, which is, make sure that when you that your people, in that what they're good at, what's going to make them happy doing, and then don't make them bend to your leadership style. Make sure that you understand them, and that you're not just saying, "Hey, too bad." You have to do what I tell you to do, and don't question or anything like that. Let them ask questions. You don't like to have your authority questioned, but asking questions there's nothing wrong with that. And then, understanding your people will make you successful, and it will make them successful. And if you make sure and it doesn't mean just letting people do whatever they only want to do. That, obviously we can't do that. But if they have something, for example, in the galley, you've got people that are really good at baking, and you have people really good at sauce making. You have people really good at grilling. You have people really good. And, if somebody hates baking, you're not going to put them on as a night baker. I mean, that's just not good. Now, if everybody hates baking, then you probably have to figure something out. But, if somebody's like, hey, I kind of like this, I want to get better at it. I'm not that great right now, but it interests me. Set them up, let them do it. But they have to be willing to come to you to tell you that. That's the other thing too, is you either have to ask them, or you have to have a relationship with them where they're willing to come and tell you. And the way they're going to come and tell you is that they know you care, is they know you're going to do something about it. If they said, hey, Chief, I really like doing this, and that's nice. Everybody's going to get a chance to do that. Don't think that I'm just going to put you in. Then they're like, well, it doesn't matter what I like. The chief doesn't really care what I like. They don't really care if I'm doing what I want to do. I guess everybody's going to have to take a turn. That's probably not the best leadership style, in my opinion. And you'll get a lot more out of you'll get a higher quality product, a lot better result. You'll be happier. You'll be able to you're not spending your time trying to lead everybody. You're letting people work to their strengths, and it's just going to make your whole division, your whole department look better. But again, you have to know what that is, and you either have to ask them, or they have to feel comfortable to come tell you. And the only way they'll do that is if they know that you're going to act on it. I can remember being a petty officer and saying, hey, I want to do law enforcement. I want to get trained up to do law enforcement. And that's nice, go back to work. And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell them anything I like to do, because they don't care. When we talk about retention in the military right now, we talk about, recruiting and retention. A good way to help recruiting is to retain the folks you got. The way you retain the folks you have is by helping them work to their strengths. And that's the chief's job, in my opinion. That's the chief's job, is just to get to know their people and to make sure they're people. It's not just making sure that they have the work life that their need, their medical health, that's good. You want to make sure they have all that stuff, but really to make sure that they're on a career projection and trajectory that they are going to be happy with. So
back to talent management, right? And it can be difficult, like you said, in the military, right? When you enlist and you join a rating that you think sounds good, and then you get in and see the reality of it. Doesn't mean there's not something in there. So
Right.
for Navy and military purposes, MOS rating, there are still other opportunities for people to leverage that. So maybe I can't get you out of a rating. Maybe there is an opportunity to convert you over to something else. I know in the Navy we had things called career development boards. Those are what those things are for, is to identify, okay, let's learn more about you. You're currently in this position. Here's your career path. Here's the track. Here's what it looks like. But identifying these other skills that can be applied, perhaps in a collateral duty,
Yep, that's
somewhere doing
exactly.
some on a command training team, right? There's great things to do. Personally, I was a Navy nuke, right? I was an electrician's mate. Sounded all cool. And operating a nuclear power plant was cool. And, operating a 4160 volt electrical distribution system was pretty cool. But I found my affinity was towards education and training, right? So whenever I had a chance to do training or education, I just felt myself drawn to that more than operations and maintenance. And I ended up doing an instructor tour. And then, the billets I found myself in were always education and training. I think that's why I was able to thrive, where my natural affinity and skills to educate blended with the need of the organization. It all came together. So it works. So again, back to that and taking time with your people to figure out, and we're not saying an eagle is better than a duck, right? They each have their strengths and weaknesses, but how you apply them, just taking some time to learn your people. So I think that, again, don't just be dismissive and this is how it is. And that old military mindset, I think that philosophy should be changing by now, right?
Right.
Not, as we would call it, STFU leadership. Shut the F up and just do as I tell you, right? You're going to shut your people off. That's not inspiring. That's not motivating. It's not what's best for the organization. So, all right, let's jump up. Make sure people always want more of you, not less.
Yes.
If you don't know if they want more of you, you should. So how do you know or find out if they want more of you?
Well, you can ask, but that's probably not going to be all that accurate, especially if they're afraid of you. But the self-awareness is critical to good leadership. You have to know you have to know what your strengths are. You have to understand yourself. And if you walk up and there's a group of people there, and within 30 seconds or so, people start walking away. Yeah, I want to ask yourself, I wonder why that is. If you just need to know whether or not people, and the other thing too is don't talk to, you just make people wanting more of you. Oh gosh, I hope the chief comes back around, or gosh, I really want to go talk to the chief about something, or if you find that people are coming to you and asking you questions and talking to you and getting your advice, they probably want more of you. If you feel like you're constantly having to give people advice and you're constantly having to tell people what you think they need to hear, they may want less of you. And that's just something you have to know about yourself. And I said this at my retirement remarks. I didn't want to, wasn't trying to make it about me. I was trying to make it about a few lessons that I learned. And if you don't know, I'm not gonna name. I worked with a chief who I chewed my arm off to get away from every chance I could, just because I wanted to be around that person as little as possible. And they didn't know it. They thought they were awesome. They thought they were everybody's best friend. They thought everybody wanted to hear everything they had to say. And it was like, this person was the most unself-aware, least self-aware person I ever met. And I think that you need to know, you need to understand yourself. I mean, there's always you try to do the anonymous 360 feedback, but that's hit or miss. And even then, people are sometimes reluctant to, unless they really care and they really want to try to help you. But this also goes back to you wanting to be the best you could be. So if if you're honest with yourself and you say, I think people would rather have less of me than more of me, or they, I get the sense that people, they go to my colleague for advice. They go to, another chief for advice all the time, or they're always coming in for this other chief. And I'm rarely giving anybody advice just unsolicited. They come to me, and I mean, they just come in on their own, solicited advice rather, not unsolicited, but they come to me. I think you might ask yourself, why is that? Why are they, why are some people, especially if they're in your division or your department, and they're going to somebody else? You need it, and then try to, if you are humble enough and you care enough, you'll try to find, do I talk too much? Am I too opinionated? Do I tell them things they don't want to hear? Do I, and what is that? What is the driver of that? And then look at your fellow chiefs and say, what about them? Why do people want to go talk to them? And again, you have to want that. I mean, I know chiefs that didn't care. They're like, well, if they don't like it, I don't care. If they don't like the way I am, or they don't like what I have to say to them, I don't care. Well, okay, that's not a good recipe for success in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've jotted down EI, emotional intelligence, right?
Yes.
So that's where that comes into place, right?
Yes.
Being able to, how are people receiving what I'm putting out?
Yep.
And it may not be, you might have the best intent, but, I know I had, kind of RBF and I told people like, hey, when I come into a room, my face will look severe. It doesn't mean I'm mad, right? But I had to know like, hey, you can be off-putting because you come in so intense. And I'm like, okay, got it. So that just drove a conversation up front. Like, hey, whether with a division or a team or a one-on-one with a new person, like, hey, just know, and once they got it, right? So, but yeah, I love
cared.
that. Yes.
You knew.
Yep.
You were willing to take that feedback, and you knew that about yourself. And then not only did you didn't say, well, you just have to deal with that because I'm the master chief. So you said, I don't want you to feel that way. I my mind's going a lot. I'm thinking about a lot at one time, and what the expression on my face isn't always one of them. So,
yep.
Please bear with me and just know that I'm really happy to be here.
Yep.
But you have to, I mean, that's a skill. That is a skill,
Yep.
That is a leadership skill that you developed, and that's awesome. So.
Yep. And then, taking time to get the feedback or one-on-ones, right? Hey, just make time for people, right? Just, if you just make that time, you walk around a lot, like when you find that opportunity, talk with people one-on-one. And, Jason and I are talking, we're talking chiefs, mess, and military, but again, these conversations go into civilian organizations as well. If you're a leader or growing, and it doesn't matter what level of leader, new leader, experienced leader, in new positions, these things still matter. And then finally, I said, are you adding value? Right. So in your position, are you adding value to the organization? And that's what people will look for. Like the people that follow you, are you adding value to them through, encouragement, again, managerial expertise, right? The ability to help them get resources when they need it,
right.
To help deconflict, to help, be the barrier between leadership and them, to feedback their concerns, right? When they see you're adding value like that, this doesn't mean just running around being their cheerleader, right? And kind of the, hey, team, let's kind of hoorah it. That there's a piece to that, but you can be straight up and get a lot of things done and have strong managerial skills and add great value to your team.
And I want to say,
all right,
if you can you hear me?
Yeah.
Paul, I want to say something that you mentioned briefly, but it often gets overlooked is recognition. One of the things a leader does is recognize their people. And a lot of times that is we get busy, we get overcome by events, we get, things happen, and we forget to do the recognition. And that's one of the biggest things you can do to make people want more of you, is to work on recognizing your people. Work on, they will want more of you if they know you're going to recognize the good work that they're doing. And if you fail to recognize them, they will not. You'll have trouble getting them to give the same level of effort in the future. So I always, you mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier,
And
I
it doesn't
thought,
have to
well,
be
that's
complicated, right?
right.
Just walking by and praising them.
Correct. Right.
All right. And last one you offered, correct. Always seek first to understand, then be understood. So what's your thoughts on this? And
So,
then what can inhibit people from doing this?
so that is, one of the ways you can break trust with your people is to jump to conclusion. So if you feel like you understand a situation sooner, before you truly do understand it, you're gonna break trust with your people, and having trust is the most important thing you can do. If your people trust you, you don't have to explain yourself all the time. If they trust you, they will work hard for you. If they trust you, there's a lot that they can that goes to with trust. But if you start, if somebody's late for work a couple times and you just jump on them without trying to understand what's going on, um, that's you'll lose their trust. So I'm a firm believer in ask questions, don't jump to conclusions, take the time that you need to understand a situation before you make a decision or before you start trying to correct behavior. So that's that. I hate to break the chi of the podcast, but I lost the audio.
Yeah, I don't think you.
And
Yeah, I've got it now.
Okay,
Yeah, there's some pixelating in and out, so I'll have to
yeah,
edit that whole last section. You
sorry.
were dropping out.
Yeah, my
Um,
computer's telling me that
all right.
that.
So, all right, final thoughts and the kind of things you would recommend to people.
Okay, so first off, thanks for writing the Chief Petmaster Guide. I love that. I use that frequently when I was a Master Chief Petmaster of the Coast Guard. It doesn't apply just to chiefs; it applies to all leaders. I leadership is critically important to the success of the military, to the success of any organization. And if you understand yourself, if you're self-aware, if you lead yourself, and if you can role model behavior for others, you will your leadership life will be so much easier, and people will love you. There's not much more rewarding than having somebody call you back 5 years later and say, "Hey, I just want to tell you how successful I've been, and I attribute that to your leadership, to your role model." Because at the end of the day, leadership is really about being a role model. It's about getting others to do what you need them to do, without really having to because they want to do it. And to do that, if you really need to role model that behavior, you need to understand yourself. You need to make sure that you're the type of leader that other people want to be, and everything else will come easy after that. Your technical proficiency, your intelligence and knowledge, all that is secondary to your attitude, to the way you treat others, and to your ability to demonstrate the behavior that you're looking for in others. That if you can get that right, everything else will work itself out. Somebody will be smart. Somebody will always be more intelligent than you. They'll always be more technically proficient. They'll always be, more, policy smart. But when it comes down to leading others into being successful, it's about attitude. It's about personality. It's about, having self-discipline and, role modeling the behavior that you're looking for in others. Over.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. You've offered a ton, and I appreciate it. I think that's a lot for our audience to think about, digest, and hopefully take in and apply to make their leadership skills and management skills better. So, Jason, thanks again for taking some time to join me.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, everyone, that'll do it for another episode of the Cutlass Podcast. To learn more about this topic or the topics we've discussed, there's a lot of content in the Chief Petty Officer's Guide and the New Petty Officer's Guide. Both of those you can get through the U.S. Naval Institute. Just check out their book section. And Jason listed some other resources and books as well. So check those out. I'll drop those in the episode description. And then if you like what you hear, of course, like, subscribe, comment on the Cutlass Podcast and the YouTube channel that I've got this building now on, Paul's Cutlass Classroom. Help me spread this content to those who can use it to improve. Again, work hard. Take what we've offered today. Work hard to keep that leadership cutlass sharp. Reflect, improve, and then take what you learn to become a sturdy, versatile, incredible leader who dares to make a positive difference. And we'll see you in the next episode.